Hello, my name is Marco, and I'm here today to do the video presentation of the CV Builder that we developed for Programming 2. And I would like to start this presentation with a little plan overview of what we're going to cover in this video. Just share here my screen. Right, so for today, we're going to cover some key concepts, things we've done differently from the user profile builder we built previously in this module, and any different logic that we are applying here on the CV preview, CV profile builder. And then we're going to go through a user walkthrough, explaining the code and showing you how a user would use the application regularly. So first of all, I want to reference and give a massive thank you to the FlatLab team that provided us with this look and feel theme that you can see on your right side. Gives this like whitish kind of look that makes it look like a proper application. And I think it looks amazing. So thank you very much to them. Then I want to go through the architecture that we're using. We are using an MVC architecture where our model layer handles, stores and handles the data. Our view stores and handles all the UI related, and our controllers then controls, links those two together to give the functionalities to the application. We also have a persistence layer, which is where we handle all the file related queries, let's put it that way, and where that allows us to read profiles, save to file, and save to documents. Next up, we are going to go through model objects and data. So we're using singletons in our application. We are using 4 singletons to be specific, 1 for the main view, 1 for the top main menu, 1 for the file manager, and 1 for the database model. So we've done this way because we can access these components from anywhere within our application, and we guarantee that at any given point, we only have one instance of these components. Also, I want to go through the database model and how we store data and database model and user attributes pretty much. So we store data in a hash map of a hash map, and then we store user attributes inside. I decided to do it this way because we are handling with user, the name or section and subsection, and then this is names, strings. So then in this way it would be easier to retrieve those instead of having numbers there. And we are using linked hash maps because the order does matter. So we need to use those. So we're storing user attributes. We're using this because we want to work in accordance to the object orientated. So we want to work with objects instead of raw data. And this also makes it easier for us to modify any data further down the line, just passing this object, the instance of this object inside the tab view panels. Then we can just modify it, modifies in the whole application. So our user attributes, what it does, it stores a string section, a string subsection, and an array list of strings, which is all the attributes. So for example, user names, and it stores all the names that the user added or contains in there. Next up, the tabs. So I'm not going to go too much deep into it since we're going to talk a little bit further down the line about it, but I just want to explain to you that tabs are controlled by change listeners, and these change listeners basically update the index of the tabs every time the tabs are changed. It stores that into the database model, so we can later retrieve it at any point. It does this by getting the section pane and the subsection pane. In here is subsection pane because, and not subsection panes, because when we're getting the section pane, we're already getting the one that is currently selected instead of having to guess. And then we do this here by getting the selected tab index, section tab index, and then getting all the key sets of the subsection tab panes on that section tab, and then getting the one selected. And then we go right here, and then we just get their indexes, and then we set that position into the database model. There is something else down here. I'm going to go through it later on, not now, but it's just about enabling and disabling buttons. Makes it more consistent. So next and last on our key concepts is the checkbox logics. So the logic I implemented here is that every panel within the subsection tabs contains a checkbox. So these checkbox are either set to visible or not visible. So we do that on here. And then every time we create a subsection tab, we create a tab view panel, which we're going to add to it. And then on that tab view panel, we will create a tab view panel that has a checkbox or not. The way we do this is whenever we're creating the tab view panel, then we specify, in here, so we specify if it has a checkbox or not. If it's meant to have a checkbox, then the set selected is turned to false and the set visible to true, so the user can click on it. If it's not meant to have one, it will still have one, but then set selected to true and then set visible to false. So it's still there, but the user can see it and interact with it. So starting our user walkthrough, we are going to go through the initial window first. This is just how the first setup happens. So we start on the app. Here is where we set up the theme for our application. Then we start on swing utilities invoke later. This is so we guarantee that the events are handled appropriately through the event dispatch thread. Then we just create a mainframe. I'm not going to go through too much into it because this was already done in the user profile builder. And then we just set to that mainframe, we set the content pane for an instance of the main view, again, a singleton. So we create the first time the instance and we get that instance, and for the J menu bar of the top main menu. So going to the main menu, it's just very simple. We just show first a few labels. I'm going to run it here just so you can visualize it. Right. Today probably would be great. Yes, all right, here we go. Then it just displays a little information to the user. There is an update method here. I'm going to go through it later. Let's go to the top main menu. So top main menu, pretty simple again. We just create a J menu. We add item menus to it, and then we apply the controller. You must notice that at the first instance, we don't have save to file, save to document, or print. This is due to because we don't have any file open yet, we don't have the need for those buttons. And then if you would have those buttons, it would just break the application. So we don't want that. With the only ones we have open file and exit file. So now for the fun part, we're going to show how the user would open a file. Let's go to the code here. I'll first demonstrate how that works in the application. So file, open file. User would choose a file, open, and then everything would be open with the tabs and all the buttons necessary for the application to operate. So the way this works is then we start on the top main menu controller. Then one thing I didn't mention before is all our listeners, action listeners, change listeners, are not applied to the panels, but they are applied to the items themselves. I've done this way because I think is more visually correct and easier to modify. Anytime you would need to modify any of the actions, you can just easily see what item you are editing, and then you can just edit itself. And even easier to implement when you are implementing the controllers itself. So coming back, so open the file. In here, we would then set up a file chooser, a filter to the file chooser, and then if a file was chosen, clears the database model. This was a method that we created to clear up the database and the current tabs index. And then we would go to the file manager then and read the profiles in here. So in here, read profiles, we just create a buffered reader. We read the first line because we don't need the first line, it's just section, subsection. And then from there, we would then read each line, separate each item with a comma, get a string array with all the items, and then decode the information. So wherever we have this thing, we would put a new line. Wherever we have this thing, we would put a comma, and then we would pass that into the database model to set the attributes. And its sense is where we done it is here. So we pass the thing we just talked about. So we know in the first position, we do have a section. In the second position, we have the subsection. And then on all the others, we have the attributes that the user has on them. And then for that, we would then create a new instance of the user attributes and then set those title, subtitle, and subsection title and the attributes. And then we would store it into our database. The way we do this is if our database already contains, still doesn't contain the key, the section key or section title, then it would add a new one and then create new, so we can store the new subsections into that section title. And then we would put that new subsection with user attributes into that section title. All right, so with this out of the way, we then activate our remaining buttons from the top main menu, and then we would update our main view. On our main view is very simple. We just remove everything, repaint, set new layouts, and then we start a new edit tab panes and a new bottom main menu. Just going to quickly show the bottom main menu, not very much in deep, because we're going to go through it later, but the only thing it does is just it sets layouts and sets the profile, the preview button to false, because obviously we're going to always start on the first position, and then we would get the new buttons and set the action controllers for it. Then on our edit tab panes, where all the action happens, is so here is where we store all our sections, subsections, and tab view panels, so we can retrieve it later. All getters, setters, special getters up here. And then the way we start this, then we create a new section tabbed pane where we're going to add all our section tabs. Then we are going to go through the database model, all the sections, and then we're going to create a new subsection tab pane where we add all the subsection tabs. Then we go through all the subsections, and then we're going to create a tab view panel for all of those tabs. This is the thing we talked earlier about the checkboxes, so I'm not going to go through it. Then we're just going to jump down here and say that yes, so we're going to add this tab view panel to this, and then add a tab to the new subsection pane, and then put this one into our storage. And down here, then when every subsection finishes doing, then we're going to add this to the section, new section tabbed pane has a tab. Then when all the sections and subsections are created with tabs, we're just going to go at the end and add this to this JPanel edit tab panes to be able to be visible to the user. Then we apply all the change listeners to the tabs. Let's go into the tab view panel after we create the tabs. Then again, the checkbox logic in here, we already went through it. So we build the row panels. So once we pass in our user attributes, then we're going to go through each of the values, and then we're going to create a row panels. Type info, we're going to go through it a little bit after this page. Then we pass in the value, a button group, so the radio buttons have the expected action, and we add to these row panels. So we store this row panel instance in case we need to retrieve it, and we add this to the rows container. We add to the rows container because we're applying a scroll pane to this. So in case we have too many, we can scroll it up and down. And so then we need to add this rows container to the scroll panel in order to function. And then when all of the info rows are added, we add then our add row at the end, so the user can add an attribute. We're going to go through this later. We won't need this now. It's just for the adding. Then we're going to go through the row panel. Again, row panel, very easy. Just setting up all the buttons we would need. Now in here is where the row panel logic happens. So we, if it's an info row, we would add info row with this user attribute and the button group. This is done down here. Again, just setting up text areas, edit buttons, and add all of it. And then else, if it's not an info row, or it will add an add row, which an add row is pretty much the same as just with less buttons onto it. So for our row panel operations, delete, edit, and add, let's go to our code, and then I'll show you first how it works. So to delete a row, let's suppose we want just Taylor, just press delete, then it moves from the area. So the way we do this is in our row panel controller, then we have our delete button listener. Every time it's pressed, it triggers this action listener. Then in here, we just create a show confirmation dialog box that actually I could have put this down here, but yeah, if the user presses OK, so it's gonna get the index of the row panel to remove, and doing this goes to row panel, tab view panel, get the row panels and the index of the row panel we just selected, and then we go to the get user attributes that we passed on to our tab view panel, and then we remove the attribute from the index that we just got. Then we go to the tab view panels again, and then we get the row panel, and we remove the row panel. We don't use the index here because it's the same object, same row panel. So it just removes that instance of the row panel. And in the tab view panel, get rows container, we remove as well that row panel from the rows container that is inside the scroll pane. Now for the edit, I would have to show you here first that we're using the help of a helper function here. This is just to display the so how the user would modify the information that is on a row. I'll just show you, probably it's better. So imagine we want to change the first one so that this helper function that displays exactly this one. And it is a scroll pane, so if we go too much down, it's just allow us to scroll. Of course, we wouldn't use this for the name, but yeah. So let's just edit it this way. As you can see, it does edit it. So let's go into how this is actually done. So this is done in the edit button listener. Again, it does kind of the same. Then the delete, the only difference would be that then we are creating a new edit input from our helper class to display our information. And then we would do exactly the same thing. Select the row panel index, then get that index. Then we go to the user attributes, and then we set that user attribute for the text. And then we would set the text in the text area of that row panel to the text that user just inserted. Now for our final one, for the add button, I'll just show you here very quickly. Let's say we want to add Marco, and then it adds up. This one differs a little bit from the previous ones. So the way it does it, then it creates a new edit input, and then it goes showing the user with the dialog box. The only difference here is if the input is equal to empty, it notifies the user that the field cannot be empty, and then it won't add anything. Else is going to get the user attribute again from the tab view panel and add this attribute, and get tab view panel and add the row panel. The way it does this is on the row panel. It has this info row add row panel. Sorry, in tab view panels, it has the add row panel. Then the way it does is it creates a new row info panel. Again, info row, and then removes the last component. So the add row, then adds the row info panel to it, then adds to the rows container as well to keep it for indexing later if we need to get it back. And then we create a new row add panel, and then we add that to the end so it keeps the structure. For our bottom main menu operations, the previous button and next button. So I already showed you before how we add those buttons to the bottom menu. So let's just see how the controls are made. So basically here, whenever we press the preview button, for example, we're going to get the main view instance so we can get the edit tab panes, so we can get the selected section tab pane and subsection tab pane. In here, we just set the selected index for -1 or +1, depending on which of the buttons we pressed. And then in that sense, it changes the tabs. I'll just show you here how it works. The reason why I explained you in the beginning the logic of how the tabs indexes are stored is due to I find it easier now to explain to you that we can change the tabs this way, but then what actually prevents us from going further, the first tab or ever last tab, is that our change listeners within the tabs, our controllers there are able to disable the buttons whenever we reach the last and the first ever tab here, so preventing us from going any further from that point. And for our last section, we have then the top main menu operations like save to file, save to document, and print. This is kind of probably the longest bit we're going to have, but I'm going to try my best to explain it as quickly as possible. So we do that on our top main menu controller. I'm just going to first show you how the user would see this. So imagine we want to save all of this to file. Let's just delete here a few fields very quickly. Let's just delete everything here. So yes, save to file. The user would choose a file, demo, and then save to file, file saved. And then we could come down here and see that everything is saved and encoded as it necessary. So the way we do this is every time the save to file is pressed. So again, we start a new file chooser with a filter. And then if the choice was okay, then we get the path. And then if the file exists, it does prompt the user it's saying that the file already exists. Would you like to override? And then if the selection is anything but yes, it returns, so it doesn't do anything. If it's anything but yes, and if the answer is yes, then it goes to the file manager, saves to file, and prompts the user saying that the file was saved successfully. So the file manager does this by saving this to file. Starts a buffered writer, writes the first section since it doesn't really matter to us, and then starts a new string builder named file content, so we can build all our file content into one place, then goes through all the attributes database that we have on our database model through every section, and then through every subsection of those sections, and then stores that into the user info. Then on the user info encodes the information back in. So every new line goes back to this. Every comma goes back to this. And then writes the section and subsection in one line. So on the user attribute, if you remember, we had the section and the subsection. So we append that to that line, then a subsection, and then all the attributes that are written in that are added into there. Then at the end, appends this line to the file content. When it goes through every section and subsection, it writes this file content to the file. Now our next one is the save to documents. Then for that, we have this small notification to the user. I'll just quickly add something here. All right, so for this one, we would have to select the missing fields. Of course, in here, as I told you before, it doesn't show any box, but the box is like it's still there. It's just not shown to the user and is selected as selected. And well, this one is selected as not selected because it's visible to the user. The user can interact with it. So the way we do this is we try to save to the document. It displays this to the user. And then if the user presses yes, user can choose a file, demo2, example, prompts the user saying that the file was saved. And then if we go here, we have a text file with the information that we required in the order that was requested. So the way it does this is, again, on our top main menu controller, we do have a save to document class, where we're going to save to the document. Then we're going to have to go through a few more helper classes that we needed to do this. So the first one is going to be the file save attributes, which is file save that needs the attributes that needs to be saved to the file. And then we use this helper class down here. What it does is then it creates two variables, one that is save attributes or save to file attributes and missing attributes. So whenever we are going through the tab view panels that are on the edit tab panes, we go through every tab view panel and check if the checkbox is selected. Then we create this temporary variable just so we can store our attribute if there is any. And then we go to the save attributes that we just created, say that if we still don't have that section, please add it to it, and put a new key with a new linked hash map there, key named section, and then go through every row panel on our row panel stored in the tab view panels. And if the radio button is selected, then it sets the attribute to that text area. And then on the save attributes, gets that section and then puts a subsection with the attribute in so we can later retrieval. Then this is in the case that is any check, if the checkbox is selected and there is an attribute, there is a radio button selected. If there is no radio button selected, so the attribute would come empty, a temporary attribute we just created. And if that attribute comes empty, we're going to add that instead to the missing attributes variable. So then later we can just easily see what attributes are missing. Then going back to our save to documents, we have then we start then. So if the missing attributes, the one I just said, is anything else but 0, means we have missing mandatory fields, and then displays that to the user and gets out and does nothing in that case. If not, then we're going to go back in here, and then here is where we use the help of another helper class. That this helper class is to display the thing to the user. So we just remove here one, remove fine. So let's save the document, and then it displays, wait, no, that one displays this one. So this helper class helps us display this one. Basically just formats the text for us. So the way it formats the text is just so then sets the save attributes here so we can use it. We passed it in here, and then it goes through every. So he writes basically the first lines. He goes through every section of that save attributes and adds it to this text variable, and then goes through each subsection and then adds those into that text variable. When all of that is done, it then gives us all the preview into one class that we can use it on our top main menu controller. So we do that through, so yeah, if we don't have any missing attributes, we're going to then create a new instance of it, passing the save attributes inside to get checked. Then if the user said OK to that, here is where we use the helper class so we can display it in the show dialog. Then if the option is OK, we're going to again create a new file chooser with a file extension filter. And then if the user says OK, then we're going to check if the file exists. If the file already exists, it prompts the user to overwrite it. Again, if anything is but yes, returns. If the answer is yes, goes back down here. File manager saves to document that CV preview formatted text that we just talked about, and then prompts the user with that. Let's go now to the file manager and show you how we would save to a document. So save to document is pretty simple. As long as since we already passed the whole text in, we just start a new buffered writer, and then we just write that text to the file that we just specified. Last one is the print item, which is pretty similar to this one. The only difference is we print to we open a print dialog instead of the other type of dialog, the message dialog to do that, or so the way we do this is the same way. We start the file save attributes, then we get the missing attributes. If anything but 0, then it doesn't do anything, just does this here, prompts the user with that. If it doesn't contain any missing attributes, then again we start a new CV previewer. Just going to show you. It's kind of the same. It's just he opens this type of dialog instead, so a printing dialog instead of the other one, and then that's where it does here. Show confirmation dialog. Yes, if you want to print it after the preview, then here is where he opens that dialog I just showed you, and then here just displays a little information saying if it was completed or if anything else happened in the process. So I think we covered it all. File manager, top menu, controller print, yes. File manager, save to document. We don't have any print to file, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.